everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Committed Critics, a pop culture podcast where we're not only committed to our opinions, but also each other. Aww. Yay! So you probably heard Kevin's voice in here, but he didn't do the intro. I did. So it's me, Jordan Smearman, and go ahead. Who else do we have here today?
No one. It's just Jordan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maggie is here. I was on a previous podcast. I was on the Girls Cast a little bit ago, and I'm here today, and I'm very excited to be back. So Maggie is in the podcast.
Yay, Maggie's back! Yay!
And yeah, I'm here too, Kevin Lau. But Jordan already introduced me, so
yeah, took that away from you. Sorry, but yeah. So we're changing it up a little bit. Maggie's here, and so is Kevin, because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite books and also one of my favorite movies. It is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. We're going to be talking a little bit about both the book and the movie, so there will be some spoilers ahead. So if you haven't read it or watched the movie, first of all, just pause this and go do that, because this is, oh my goodness, I absolutely loved this book and movie so much. Like it's a staple of my teenage years. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about that, and as well as how the book and the movie differ from each other, and just book to movie adaptations in general. So with all of that being said, let's get started. We're going to talk about the book first. So the book was first published in 1999. It was written by Stephen Chbosky. This was his very first book, I believe. And it follows a boy named Charlie who's starting his freshman year of high school. And he just lost his friend to suicide, and now he's trying to be a part of high school and really live out those high school years and things like that. And he befriends two seniors, Sam and Patrick, and the whole story about their adventure throughout this first year of high school for him is told in a series of letters to a friend. We don't know who the friend is. It's just someone in general to think about, and just someone who he even says in the beginning, someone, because she said you would listen. So it's just kind of like a way for him to journal and kind of talk about what was going on for him throughout his life, because he has had some traumatic things happen to him. So let's just talk about first likes and dislikes. So Kevin, you want to start off?
yeah, sure. So I read the book. So I'm basing all of my memory. I read the book back when I was 19 years old. I think I watched the movie first. One of the rare occasions where I did that, because the movie was talked about a whole bunch.
Yep.
I really like the book. It's a really, so the structure of the letters is really great. It's similar to, if you read other classic books, The Color Purple does the same structure.
Okay.
So where it's just like, oh, dear friend, this is what happened to me today. And except it's not as fun. It's more traumatic. Than that.
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But Charlie's voice is very well realized, and it really glues the entire book together to series of vignettes. So it's not like an actual plot structure. Which is still just fine. It's still only 200 pages. So it's a really quick breeze to go through. But it's just very dense. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of, it's kind of, it can easily be misinterpreted for to have those what is it? The hashtag nice guys, r/nice guys. So I've seen it have misinterpreted a lot in my high school years. And so but at its core, it's really about this kid. He's gone through some stuff. He's got to deal with balancing that with the real world, more that happens in the real world. It's not just bad things happen to you. And a lot of time it's outside of your own control. And basically you're learning to accept that, and everyone has their own, and you're not the only one with problems. Everyone else has their own problems too. And I say that in a mean way, but it's actually no, it's learning to empathize and learn to maybe that your experiences can help other people with their experiences as well. So it's just very, it's very, so I do want to give a little bit of a content warning, obviously, it's about talking about suicide. I think mentions of sexual assault are in the book as well. So it's
abortion as well.
It's great. Solid 5 out of 5 from me. As my bouncing around review.
Yeah. Maggie, what about you?
My history with the book is a little weird because I, like Kevin, I'd seen the movie first, and I absolutely fell in love with that. But then obviously I knew it was a book, and so but I was really poor as a kid, so I wouldn't go buy books. And so I told Jordan this, and it's really sad, but I would read the inserts of the book in Kroger when my mom would shop. And so, and then it wasn't until later in life that I finally read the book through. But I think that the book, and it really encapsulates in just such, it's one, I think, books that are very aware of the audience. And I think that, like Kevin mentioned, the way that it's Charlie basically writing, he's writing to his friend, but it almost feels like he's writing to you. And so it feels very personal. And I think that's something that it does incredibly well. And I think that the topics that it's dealing with, the way it talks about it in the book, the book was very popular for a long time before the movie ever came about. And so I think, I just think in general, it's just a very strong coming of age. And, I wish I could bring something different, but I do love it. I mean, I agree with Kevin. It's like 5 out of 5 for me. I just think that, especially for a read, I'm not a reader. I've never been a huge reader in my life. So if a book catches my attention, it's usually because it made me feel seen, And so I absolutely adore it. I think it encapsulates, teenage, your like teenage trauma and your life in that time so well.
And I also do want to point out that so this is technically a young adult book, but it came out before young adult was a genre. So you when you find it, look for it at Barnes and Noble. It's in the adult section because they just never changed it.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Can't
that.
confirm this. I bought the book yesterday.
Yeah.
And it was in the adult section.
Yeah. But it's the way it handles trauma. It's not. It thankfully does not use trauma as a plot twist. It is not a spoiler to know that this has very traumatic topics inside of it. That is just the nature of the book, and I think that, and a lot of especially young adult books nowadays, and adult books does as well, where they have the trauma as the plot twist. It's like, you can't give a content warning because that would spoil the book. Like, that's not how you write about trauma.
Right.
That is how you trick people into reading something that's triggering for them, which is it boosts sales, not good morally.
Right.
So thankfully the book does not do that. I want to give it praise for that. Even writing it in 1999 with young teens as the core audience, like that could still be generally thought of as okay at the time. But yeah, thankfully it doesn't do that. It helps keep it timeless as well.
Yeah. And I would have to agree with that. So we're actually all very in agreeing with this because I saw the movie before I read the book as well.
Nice.
And I saw it when it came out in 2013, the movie did. So I saw it when I was 12 turning 13.
Wow.
That's what I get for having a late birthday. But yeah, I absolutely loved the movie. And then my mom read the book first and then I read it right after her. And I don't know, so
it's very mature for a 12, 13-year-old.
Yes, it was. But I even at that young of an age, I was bullied and stuff in middle school and I felt very much like an outsider. And so I found a lot of comfort within this book. And even though it talked about serious issues, I still could relate to Charlie and his situation, especially because right before I started high school, that's when my family moved to Canada. So then I was not only was I starting at a brand new school, but I was starting in a brand new country that I knew nothing about. I found even more comfort in it. Yeah. Maple syrup, metric system, all of those things, moose. But, yeah, so I don't know. I always felt like I fell in love with it, and I've read the book countless times. It's one of the very few books that I've actually reread. It's because I don't really reread books, and I don't really rewatch TV shows. So if I do, then you definitely know that I absolutely love it, and this is one of the very few ones that I have.
You can read it like a daily devotion.
Basically, anytime I've just needed something comforting, I'm immediately drawn to it. And it does talk about serious topics and things like that. But Kevin, like you said, it does it in such a beautiful way that it doesn't feel like, you know, it's this huge thing. It's just a part of life. And I think that's why I love it so much.
Beautiful is the word, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just like, it makes it normalizes it, because it is a normal thing that happens. Like, everyone has their trauma from their past and, you know, things that happen to them. And, you know, like, I'm sure if I read it again, I haven't read it in a little bit, but if I read it again, I would definitely probably relate to other characters too. Like, I've always identified with Charlie, but maybe this time I'll identify more with Sam or more with Patrick. And that's what I absolutely love about this. And because it came out in 1999, so it's 22 years old, like, it's still relevant today. Like, it still is one of those things that is just like, these topics will never go out of date, because they're always going to be things that not just teenagers, but mainly teenagers, since it's about teenagers in the book. But everyone deals with these things. Everyone deals with trauma. Everyone deals with, you know, feeling out of place and not really knowing what to do or where to go. And I don't know. Like, I absolutely love it. Again, 5 out of 5 from me as well. But it's so amazing.
It's like Shakespeare, where it's about the human experience, and the human experience doesn't age out. And so, like, when it comes to Perks of Being Wallflower, there's not a lot of talk about technology.
Right.
So, like, you know, that technology hasn't aged out or anything. He's writing letters. He's talking about his human experience as a high schooler. And that's something that's going to stick around for a long time, I think.
Yes.
And I think back to, like, the comment about beautiful, I think it's very interesting. While, of course, the trauma is not really beautiful. The healing,
no, right.
The healing of trauma, though, and the healing from it is beautiful. And the way Charlie's friends make him feel, you know, is beautiful. And that's what I think it's like, trauma itself isn't beautiful, but sometimes what comes out of it, in my opinion, you know, is beautiful, because, you know, because Charlie was who he was attracted to this group of people. You know, he could have easily, I think that's the interesting part. You know, like, this group is a very specific group of kids, like you knew in high school. Like, I know that I knew kids like Sam and Patrick. And honestly, I definitely was like kind of Sam in high school. And my best friend was definitely like Patrick. And so it's like, you know, he could have easily been with any other group of kids, but it was this group of kids, and they're, you know, it's like, I think that's what's beautiful is, like, in high school, like attracts like a lot. And, you know, that's why people say high school is really cliquey. And I think that's true. But I think in this instance, it's like, yeah, but sometimes it's cliquey because, like, you just, you befriend the same people who have the same baggage as you do and the same, like, life as you. And I think that that's what's really beautiful about this is, like, finding your place. Because while high school is really cliquey and that can suck, in this, it kind of shows that the pros and cons of it, because obviously we have Patrick's storyline with his, you know, secret boyfriend, but then we have, and like, that's a con of cliques and, like, you know, ideologies of how you're perceived. But also sometimes when you have people like Sam and Patrick who find each other, and Charlie who find each other, it's really beautiful, because it's like, oh, we're all the weirdos. Well, let's all go be psychos together, you know, like that kind of ideology.
Yep.
So speaking of that, I think we can all agree that we absolutely love the book. So about the movie, so Stephen Chbosky, which I'll talk a little bit about after the break and stuff, but he wrote the screenplay for this film as well as he directed it. So obviously he wrote the story in the first place, so he knows this in and out, but like he was the one that really helped create this movie. So speaking of the movie, since we've all seen it and stuff, what are your thoughts about that? Anyone
Maggie
can go first.
Oh, I didn't hear what anyone said.
Oh, Maggie can go first.
Go ahead, Maggie.
Thank you. So yeah, like we all said, I saw the movie first and I fell in love with it. It moved me as I saw it when I was 14. And it really was like a very volatile time in my life as well, Jordan. My living situation changed drastically. My life really kind of got flipped. And after I watched the movie, I told Jordan this, but I wrote out the whole last monologue on like sheets of paper and taped it to my bedroom wall because I just felt so seen, like as a young adult. Yeah. And I really related to the character of Sam and everything. And it was such a beautiful story. And as far as film goes and as far as like how, in that aspect, I think that, it's hard to take off my rose-colored glasses and look at it, try and critique it. But I really still think that this film holds up even to this day. When it's on, you can't help but look at it. And I remember watching it with my mom and my brother actually at the time when it came out. And everyone like got glued to it and like enjoyed it. Because like we mentioned earlier, it just identifies with the human experience, of all the feelings, the same feelings that the book emotes. I know we're going to talk about the book compared to the movie later, but just the feelings of wanting to be loved and wanting to be wanted and belong and not feel like you have all this baggage, like everyone feels that and everyone wants to feel quote unquote normal. And so, I think Logan Lerman was like amazing. That started my obsession with him. And at the time I loved Vampire Diaries. So Nina Dobrev was in it. And I was just like, oh my God, all my favorite people are in this movie. And obviously Emma Watson, iconic, and Ezra Miller. And I think the casting was spot on. And I think the direction was amazing. And I love that in the film, they really do hone in on like that timeless vibe because we don't really see a lot of technology. We don't really see the music is obviously older, but that's kind of just what that friend group would listen to. So I still 5 out of 5. I can't take off my rose-colored glasses from the first time I saw it. And, it's still to me I hold it so dear to me, it's still one of my comfort movies. So yeah, I'm obsessed with it.
Nice. So I watched it 5 years ago. So when I was 19, so the movie's was out for a bit. I found it on DVD, for like a few bucks. I was like, oh yeah, people like this movie. I'm going to check it out. Did not expect it to be as heavy as it was going to be. Cause I don't do like a check of like what the movie's about before I watch it. I'm still not sure if it's a bad habit or not. But no, I ended up really loving the movie. I think the movie is absolutely great. Very wonderfully directed. The cinematography is it's one of those things where it's like the genius is in its simplicity. When it's like, it's in terms of the camera movement, the lighting, the editing. Love that it's a 2012 movie shot entirely on film still.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it definitely looks like it was shot on film. I think it was also an indie movie as well. At least it was distributed by, let me check, Summit Entertainment. Oh yeah, so it's an indie movie for sure.
Yep.
Back in 2012, that's yeah. And the score is like it's a 1980s score, so it's very nice, totally my jam. Maggie pretty much nailed it on the head. Everyone is well casted. The pacing of the film is really nice. Like this, when it comes to adaptation, it's like it's not a straight 1-to-1, but it still understands the truth of the story, and it definitely cuts out some of the more stuff that'd be like visually traumatic in the movie form as compared to book form, which I think is nice. And yeah, it's just a nice little 2012 indie film. They kind of like a little time capsule of film. Not that it hasn't aged well, but it's just more like this thing is kind of locked in time. We can look back at it and it's still holds up.
It's very 2012.
It's very 2012.
The whole aesthetic. It was just like, and then, oh my goodness, that whole
2012
aesthetic,
young adult indie movie. Like, yeah,
Tumblr, Arctic Monkeys, that black and white era.
And what we talk about
it was definitely a Tumblr movie.
Yes.
That's, oh my gosh, I was a Tumblr girl and this was the movie. And I think it's funny now we say relevancy, not to distract off track from anyone too much, but now kids like now in 2021 are like, oh, I wish I grew up in 2014, and they'll like post all these pictures from Tumblr of 2014 and like Perks is on there, and I'm like, oh my god, these kids
or like how the TikTok is like, oh, Perks of being a wallflower is so underrated, no one talks about it anymore. Like, come on.
like we all did in 2012.
Am I that old already?
You got a big storm coming.
Literally.
It's like when we talk about 80s movies, oh, no one's talking about these movies, and their parents are like, come on. Like, everyone watched that movie when it came out. Shut up.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys as well. I think the casting is perfect. Oh my goodness. I couldn't see anyone else as those characters. Also shout out to Paul Rudd.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I love him.
Yeah,
in this role.
Paul Rudd underrated as the teacher
Best
in
English
there.
teacher.
Yes. But yeah, I love the movie. I think you guys hit the nail on the head with all of it too. So I own the book, I own the movie, I also own the soundtrack on vinyl, which
Nice.
yes, probably one of my absolute favorite things, especially because the last track on the vinyl is Charlie's Letter, and then it goes right into Heroes by David Bowie, and it's just so perfect. Oh my goodness. And for me too, this film actually like was part of the reason why I was thinking about when I first started college, I did major in cinema. So like this film was part of the reason for that. Cause I absolutely loved how music can affect a scene and affect a movie so much. Ever since I watched that Perks of Being a Wallflower for the first time, like I've always tried to find kind of like my tunnel song or like any music that can help me visualize a movie scene. So like for me, obviously Heroes by David Bowie, that's a great one, but like Midnight City by M83, like that one was a huge one for me too. I was like, that could be a tunnel song. So like, it's just amazing how much of an impact and an influence a book and a movie can have. And I just think The Perks of Being a Wallflower, like we've said, is kind of timeless with that. Like, you know, people now are like, oh, I wish I was this in 2014. It's like, okay, but you know, this came out even years before that. So it's just, I don't know. I love that. And I hope that this book and film are a reoccurring thing.
Yeah.
So
if you wish you were born in or like around in 2014 and watch this movie, you can just watch it now. It's not a big deal.
And you'll be fine.
Literally.
All right. So with all that being said, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Starting a podcast? Try a Podbean Unlimited hosting plan. It's what we use here at Committed Critics, giving us the opportunity to have our show on Pandora, iHeartRadio, and even Spotify. You can get your first month of unlimited hosting for free on us by going to podbean.com/committedcrits, just like our Twitter, or by clicking the link in the description. Podbean, the easiest, most affordable option to get started in podcasting.
And welcome back. We are talking about The Perks of Being a Wallflower, the book, as well as the movie. So before the break, we talked a little bit about our likes and dislikes, which there were none.
There were no likes or dislikes.
There were no likes or dislikes.
The movie
it was
just exists.
Praise. So we talked about how much we love the book and how much we love the movie, but now we can kind of go a little bit more in depth. So even though Stephen Chbosky wrote the screenplay and directed the film, obviously you can't fit every single detail from a book into a movie. And so there are some differences between the book and the movie. And we're just going to talk a little bit about that. So I guess like kind of the first one that I noticed for sure was that Candace, who is Charlie's sister, she is pregnant in the book. And then Charlie has to drive her to an abortion clinic to get an abortion. And that's not in the book, it's in the book. It's not in the movie. But Maggie, you were talking a little bit about that too, how that was a deleted scene, right?
Yeah. So that's actually, it frustrated me so much when I found out that was like a story. Cause like I said, I watched the movie first and then I read the book slowly over the years. And it frustrated me so much when I found out that they filmed it, but it would have gotten a rated R rating. And so they were like, well, this is a young adult film. We don't really want to risk that audience. So they filmed all of it, but they cut it. And, also what they also changed in the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, it's been years, but Charlie sees that she gets hit and she's asked him not to tell, but then he tells his teacher, and that's actually where the we accept the love we think we deserve line comes in. And then his teacher tells his parents, and then like his sister's really mad and it really puts a strain on them, and then she gets pregnant and then he drives her to the abortion. And so like what it does a lot for their relationship, but it also like teaches Charlie a lot of like respecting his sister's choice and like everything like that, because he eventually does tell, you know. And it's kind of just, I don't know, I think it was so frustrating to me because like I said, I loved Nina Dobrev and I wanted her to be in the movie more, but also just because I think that it would have made that ending scene between him and her, the fact that he calls her so strong. And I just think it would have been really helpful. But understandably, you can't have everything in it. But that was one of my biggest gripes, was just I really think it would have added so much more to that relationship, because she's just kind of there, you know, in the film. Yeah. And we don't really ever get closure on Ponytail Derek until like the end. And it's just like, oh, yeah, she just dumped him. And, you know, I just felt very unbookend, in my opinion. And I think that character could have been fleshed out better in that sense. That's like my biggest gripe with it, but I understand why they did it, to not get an R rating. But yeah, that's
hashtag release the Chbosky cut.
Honestly,
yes.
Yeah,
you know what? I'd be fine with that.
It's all filmed, so yeah, I would have loved that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not VFX heavy, so they can just put it in, I guess.
There we go.
More or less.
Just insert it. And I also still think it would have been cool to have that line. As much as I love that line in the movie, obviously he doesn't say, like, at the time he's seeing his sister get hit, and then he's also seeing Sam with all these boys, and then he's seeing Patrick. And so there's a lot of examples, but specifically I think if that line would have came as he was talking about his sister to his teacher, I feel like I don't know, I would have really liked it in that context, I think, more. It still hits, you know, it's still one of the best lines in like cinema in books, in my opinion. But I don't know, I just really loved that exchange. But you know, I said it's still my favorite movie. But yeah, that's one of my book to film.
You just I can't believe you just trashed your favorite movie.
I'm sorry. It's still
Guess it's not your favorite movie anymore. Taking away your perks of being a Wallflower membership, fan club membership card.
Not my card. I was 5 punches away from a free smoothie.
Rip.
R.I.P. Yeah. But that's like the biggest one. There's also the poem. I don't know if y'all know about the poem.
Yes. Yeah. The poem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing too, a difference that I just thought of is I feel like Charlie's relationship with his teacher is a little bit more fleshed out in the book as well. Like, I mean, you can tell that they're close in the movie, but in the book, like, he actually goes over to his house and has dinner with him and his the teacher and his girlfriend, I think, because they're supposed to be moving to New York. And I don't remember that in the movie at all. I think maybe it was a deleted scene again, but
that's
like
something that would not have aged well.
No,
like it was kind of like it's okay in the 90s, but then like in 2012, it's just kind of like it's a little weird.
Yeah, so I like that. That's a little different as well, but I don't know. I like to think that besides like the Maggie, I totally understand like with the pregnancy and like how it fleshes out that relationship a little bit more. I do think that the parts of the book that were left out weren't like critical to the story. Like, I think they were just nice little details that helped continue it on. But I feel like from the book to movie adaptation itself, like, I think it's very, very similar to the point where like even the smaller details, like I remember actually when my mom read the book for the first time and she told me, I asked her, I was like, how is it compared to the movie? And she was like, honestly, it's very, very similar. Like, there's only just a couple differences, but I think it's okay. And I would agree with her. Like, it's just, I think the movie kept the most important parts and continued that throughout. And just, I don't know, like, I think it's probably the best book to movie adaptation that I have seen.
Oh yeah.
In a while.
I would still agree to that. I think it's still the best. I just think just for that character, I think it would have fleshed out that character better. But I agree with you. I think it's the best book to film adaptation that I can think of right now.
What about you, Kevin?
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I agree with you guys. And, I think, as an adaptation, like I said, it's really great. Really understands the truth of the story and knows how to adapt that into the film medium, which is like, when it comes to film, so the book doesn't really have a narrative structure, whereas when in the movie it does, which when it comes to screenwriting, you need structure is like the most important thing. And you may be able to, in order to get it sold for money. It's it's so like, there's the stuff that was cut out. Like I said, there's some stuff that are like really graphic in the book, but like in book form, it's not graphic. But if you were to play it in a movie form, it's like, yeah, that's pretty intense. Let's tone it down a little bit. they want to keep that PG-13 rating for because money. And this is because it's just great, and it's definitely one of the better book to film adaptations. It's one of those ones where I think the movie is just as good as the book, but for different reasons. But even though they tell the same story, and nothing is misconstrued in the translation to the new medium. It's I don't think one is better than the other. I think they're both equal.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. And also the way you said, like sticking to the truth, I think that the film really does handle like that balancing of trauma, like as trying not to be triggering, but trying to address it very, very well. Like how we said, like in film now, and at that time, it was starting to become more popular to like really hone in on like these really traumatic things just for the, awe or like the surprise of it. And I think that they still really well, showed what they needed to and didn't show, it was very handled very well.
Yeah. So speaking of all of this, I think this is probably one of the very few Committed Critics episodes where everyone agrees on something. But
I feel like there was another episode we did that, but I forgot.
I hope so. I'm sure there is.
There was the Cyberpunk episode. We all agreed it was terrible.
See, there you go. Boom.
Perks is just that good.
Yes. So I would say like we've talked about like this specific book to the movie, but like just book to film adaptations in general for me are kind of hit or miss. Like, I mean, this one is a great example of what you can do with a book to film adaptation. And then you have one like City of Bones that just destroys everything that you want and makes you so mad that you leave the movie theater.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was one. But during the break and stuff, we talked about like John Green books and how there have been... I can't talk today. How they have movie adaptations and stuff like that. So like The Fault in Our Stars. What does everyone think about that one really quick?
Kevin, do you want to go?
Yeah. The book is good. I really like the book. That was my first John Green book. The movie was just all right. It moved really fast for me. And I think then there was an extended cut on the Blu-ray that I want to watch at some point that I think would fix it, but it was okay. When it comes to Paper Towns, the book was that one where the book was all right. I felt like the movie was better when it came to Paper Towns.
Interesting.
There might be a lot of people that will disagree with me, but I'm sticking to my guns on that one. And then when it comes to Looking for Alaska, I haven't seen the show yet because I don't know. It's like the book is really graphic with Looking for Alaska, where it's like I can handle that in book. Not sure if I can handle that visually in the show, or like how they even translate into a show. Like there's a lot of limitations you gotta have.
A lot of people like it. A lot of people, I've heard really good things apparently from some of the people I've talked to. But yeah,
that's my John Green experience. I haven't read Turtles All the Way Down yet, and I've only read part of Abundance of Catherines. I didn't really care for it too much.
Turtles All the Way Down was good. I have I got that for Christmas, and I actually have a signed copy of it too. So I really liked that. I thought it was a interesting adaptation, or like a way to talk about anxiety and OCD and stuff, which I thought was interesting. But cool. Maggie, what do you think about like? It doesn't just have to be John Green, but just like book to movie adaptations.
Well, I could have talked about more.
I'm sorry.
You can go ahead.
That's okay, Maggie. Go ahead.
Go ahead if you want.
No, Maggie, go ahead.
Yeah, I think book to film adaptations are very particular, especially if it's a very popular one. I think the thing about Perks was that it had a steady growth over time. And I feel like if they would have messed it up, it would have been bad. But I think it was good that it wasn't like this recent huge success. Like it had time to breathe and let audiences over almost basically a generation read it. And I think that was good and that worked for it. So nowadays when there's an insanely popular book and then it's immediately made into a film, there's issues because then the expectations are higher because more people are really, really connected to it. And I think John Green is a good example of that because John Green movies became popular, I think, mainly because of the success of Perks. Like, Perks wasn't a huge hit. Like, it was an indie film. But I think people were starting to notice that, okay, we can adopt these YA films, but young A with these YA books into films, and it'll be a big, people want it. And I just think that the reason Perks works and a lot of films don't, like City of Bones or whatever, or even Hunger Games or things like that, is sticking to your truth and sticking to what is important in the book and what's not, not letting studios just grab money or just try and pump something out to make money. Steven Chbosky, like we said, wrote and directed the film, and he wrote the book. And so that's why I think it was so successful. And then you have Harry Potter. And as much as I hate to say it now, J.K. Rowling was a part of the process the whole time. And so it worked because the original writer who had the original story that people loved, they were there to be like, hey, this is what matters. And of course, that franchise has its imperfections as well. But overall, I mean, it's one of the most successful book to film adaptations, in my opinion. And I think where John Green falters is like, the books were wildly successful at a time when it was successful to make these movies and just pump them out. And I think that's kind of why I don't think any of them are as strong, is because it felt like they were going quickly. But I loved The Fault in Our Stars book to film. I think it was pretty good. I think there have been way worse, but yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that's how
Percy
I feel
Jackson
about
movies
that.
exist.
I definitely
Narnia.
Yeah, I definitely just think
Narnia is a little iffy.
Yeah, that was like the first one was pretty good. Then
I do like the first one.
It kind of
The first one, like back in the 90s.
Oh, I've never seen that one.
There's an old adaptation. The Disney one is more of the remake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like the remake. So
I like the first one in the remake. I thought that was pretty good, and then they kind of lost me.
So, like, a quick question for you guys. So, I mean, there's book to film adaptations, but then there's also book to TV show adaptations. So, like, 13 Reasons Why was a book to TV show. Bridgerton is, I'm actually reading the Bridgerton book right now. That one is a book to TV show. And then, Looking for Alaska, that's a miniseries. So, do you think that books are better as TV shows or better as movies?
Can I get into this really quickly? Because
Yes.
Can I make a quick caveat?
Yeah, sure.
Not going to watch the 13 Reasons Why show.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
So 13 Reasons. So what I will say is it's similar situation where I think that the person who wrote the book needs to be involved. And also you have to understand what the premise of your book is doing. And is it worth doing a mini series or a series that could continue or a film that needs to be bookended in one? And
also the narrative framing of like, are you romanticizing suicide?
That too. Oof. So 13 Reasons Why as a book really shouldn't work in general. But 13 Reasons Why was actually one of my favorite books growing up. And I was really, fun fact, originally it was supposed to be made back in like, into a film back in like around the same time as Perks. And it was supposed to star Logan Lerman and Selena Gomez. Fun fact. Oh. And so I was like, yeah, it was supposed to, and that's why, but it kept getting shelved, understandably, because it's a really heavy topic. And the book now, in retrospect, it has some hits and misses in it. I don't think the book romanticizes it as much as the TV show does. And the TV show comes out.
Oh, the TV show is so...
And it's garbage, yeah. And it's so bad. And this book has one premise, and it's supposed to be done, and then it gets convoluted because they just kept trying to make money. And it's so messed up, and it sucks. And then one thing I would really recommend to people, I'm almost done, is Little Fires Everywhere. It was a book that was turned into a miniseries. It's got Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. One of my favorite book to TV show adaptation. It is so good because it stayed a miniseries. It stayed in the confines of the book and actually changed something in the book, a really big twist actually. And I think that's a perfect example of, okay, we have this great material. Let's just turn it into a visual and play around with it. And it's beautiful. And I just think it shows like, again, you're trying to pump it out and make money, or you're trying to show this beautiful story and, you know, continue it. So I recommend Little Fires Everywhere to like everyone. It's so good.
Cool.
Sorry, that was my mini rant. You unlocked something in me, Jordan.
No, that's fine. I wanted to ask that because
the raw details.
Yeah, like all the little details, I feel like you can flesh those out better in a TV show than you can with a movie, because I mean, otherwise you'll end up with every book to film adaptation will be a 3-hour movie just because you get all these little things. So like, I mean, honestly, like as I'm reading, I've watched Bridgerton just the first season. I mean, since there's only one season, I've watched it twice already, and I absolutely love it. And I'm reading the book now just to kind of see, and it's similar, but with like some smaller changes so far. And I can understand why they did it in multiple episodes, because it's really like I'm past page 100 now, and they like Simon and Daphne are now just creating this plan to pretend to be courting so that they can kind of avoid society. So like, I think it's interesting to kind of see that and see what the books leave out, or what the TV shows or the movies leave out. But I don't know. I like the idea of TV shows or even TV miniseries. Like, I think that's a great way to really like make sure that you are doing the book justice, in my opinion. Yeah. What about you, Kevin?
It just kind of depends on the book for me. Some of them, especially young adult novels. So with young adult novels, there's a limitation in terms of like how the depth of the book, where it's like, you know, it's like you have your A plot, your B plot, maybe you have a C plot. Otherwise, you got to keep it pretty simple. Children's novels are even simpler. Sometimes, usually. So sometimes it lends itself to be like, yeah, this is good for a movie. Like, that's perfect. Sometimes it's like, okay, let me get a little bit longer, like a TV show. It just kind of depends on the book, whether or not it's a weekly TV show or a binge show.
Yeah.
So like with Percy Jackson right now being adapted as a Disney Plus TV show, I'm a little hesitant about it, because I think the books lend themselves to be a movie format. Obviously, like they screwed it up the first time, but then they're not willing to risk it again. But so they're going to do it as a show. I'm hoping that's going to be in binge format and not weekly, because that's unless they're remixing a lot of the plot points to make it work for that structure. But like the Stand by Stephen King, like that's 1,000 pages, works great as a miniseries when it's adapted correctly. The Shining, even though it's almost 700 pages, works best as a movie instead of a show. But like the movie, not that we have a good Shining movie, the movie is a terrible adaptation, but it's but like you can turn it into a movie. But yeah, so it just kind of depends on the book and what structure it lends itself to. High Fidelity, I haven't seen the Hulu show yet, but I do think that would work great as a show, because the book itself is a series of vignettes that feel almost episodic, even though it's a short book, like under 300 pages. But it's also a movie, and the movie works really well too. So, it's kind of just, there's nothing's impossible is what I'm trying to say. Anything is possible if you know how to do it and you understand what you're doing. Just understand the truth of the story, and sometimes authors of the story being close to process ruins the adaptation as well, because you're dealing with an entirely new medium. I point to the Alex Rider series, where Anthony Horowitz, I think that's his name, wrote the screenplay for the movie. The movie was awful because he's writing things that like work as a book, but not in movie form. Same thing be said about the Harry Potter movies, the Fantastic Beasts movies. J.K. Rowling is writing those. She's a terrible screenwriter. I watched the movie. I'm like, oh, that was okay, I guess. Then I read the screenplay. Just kind of see like how she wrote the screenplay as someone who like she writes novels most of the time. She doesn't even outline novels. She discovery writes them, and it's just like this. Like she writes details in there. It's like, well, we can't see that visually. Like, how are we supposed to know that? Like, so it's terrible. There's other things we can say about J.K. Rowling too, about how that are terrible, but this is not a slander episode. But yeah, anything is possible, but understand the truth of the story. Know what medium you're working on. Know not the rules, but more like the guidelines, and see what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, you're good.
So what we're really saying is props to Steven Chbosky for being able to write a good book and a good screenplay.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yay!
And to the future Percy Jackson show, please don't mess it up.
Yeah, I mean, How to Train Your Dragon is based on a book series that should lend itself to a TV show, but the books are terrible and the movies are good.
Hey.
Oh, I love
so
those
anything
movies.
is possible. And like we
Yes.
said, but Perks of Being a Wallflower is the
Sometimes,
Is the standard.
sometimes authors write terrible books that can become great movies by changing the entire execution of the idea.
best. Instead, Perks of Being a Wallflower is the blueprint. They understood the assignment.
Stay under 200 pages in the book and you'll be great.
Yeah, you're fine. All right. So this has been another episode of Committed Critics. I thought it was a very successful episode and amazing. So you can follow us on Twitter at Committed Critics. That is at COMMITTEDCRITS. We're also on YouTube at Committed Critics, and then anywhere you can find your podcast. You can also support us on Patreon. So shout out to Davey Peppers from Game Mechanics and Ryan Kolkowski from Ryan Plays Drums. Thank you all so much for supporting us. And thank you, Maggie, for coming on and talking about this amazing book and movie. And yeah, so this has been another episode of Committed Critics, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.